Okay, I'm gonna play with these. All right. So I'm just gonna start out today by sort of recapping yesterday. I realized when I was reviewing in the playback that I made a lot of mathematical errors. I think I get a little nervous when I'm live, especially like with my cold and trying to cover that up and everything. So I did in the video yesterday where there were errors, I put in the description, I put the links pinned as a comment for all the videos I referenced, but I did sort of make notes in there. So for one, I said, I'm just going to go over this just while I wait for any of you to get in here. And then I have a few things laid out for us today. We're going to talk a little more about the collective North Node return because I told you guys that video got kicked out last week. And the other day when I was trying to recap it, I got sort of lost on that. So, and then we're going to go over this couple that I found that's been married for 50 years and their synastry. And the overarching theme of that is going to be, why does it seem that, couples that were married in the older generations tended to find the correct synastry matches and nowadays we don't. So I'm really gonna kind of like, and also another thing that I kind of touched on a lot in the last 2 days that I didn't really articulate is that when we're dealing with malefic deal breakers, what I was trying to say, I'm like opposition square, opposition square. What I'm trying to say is in the opposition, it can work. I'm seeing that more and more. In the squares, it still doesn't. It's still a deal breaker. So I don't recommend it if you can avoid it to have it in an opposition, malefic deal breaker. But it can work with an opposition. It won't work with a square. So we'll really dig into that with this couple because they do have a few of those oppositions. I also saw it in a couple that's my friend's grandparents that were married for like 70 years. They were even like in the newspaper. Okay. Like today, I guess is my word. Try to knock that SoCal talk out of me. But so yesterday, some of the errors I said Libra and Aquarius make a nice opposition. I meant to say Leo and Aquarius. I said my Saturn in Jupiter, I meant to say my Saturn in Jupiter ruled Sagittarius. I said my moon in Pisces because I had gone over the Grand Cross and I said that all correctly, even though I was really just sort of like knocking it out. But what I meant to say is moon in Virgo. Obviously, I said that 10 other times. So I just hope I didn't throw you off if you watched that video. And then when I also kind of touched on, I think that Cherie and Tony Gaskins have Mars conjunct Jupiter. They do. I was correct about that. It's in Capricorn. Mars and Jupiter are great allies in a conjunction in the sign of Capricorn. That's a lot of security and stability as well. Kind of going back to their Saturnian theme with Venus conjunct Saturn. It is in a very wide orb, but yes, her Mars is landing in Capricorn and his Jupiter is landing in Capricorn. And even though it's a wide orb here, it's still going to reinforce. Now, it wouldn't be enough by itself, obviously, to make the marriage, but it's definitely a good reinforcement that, her way of doing things aligns with sort of his higher purpose and mission, okay? So with that being in family values. And then her Jupiter, again, as we discussed, is conjunct his sun, which is also, which is the whole husband thing. If you want to know more about that, watch the video from yesterday. It's titled Cherie and Tony Gaskins Synastry. So anyways, now that we went over all that, I'm just going to make a quick note about the North Node return in Aries and some of the themes for the collective. So it doesn't matter where your North Node is. This is how it impacts all of us. For an example, one thing would be, the North Node in Aries is dealing with independence and freedom and identity versus the South Node in Libra dealing with the others, partnership, legal partnerships, marriage. Now, they say like fame would be indicated by the 10th, 11th, and even the 5th house, especially like if somebody's midheaven or ascendant is in Leo, that can indicate fame because Leo draws a lot of attention. It is ruled by the sun and everybody wants to be around the sun. It's warm, it's bright, we need it to live. So Leos do draw a lot of attention naturally, and some people resent that and some people just love it. But with that being said, with the sun, okay, so with that being said, I kind of went off on a Leo tangent there. What we're going to see in the collective, and I'm probably not going to go too far off on this right now because I still have to sort of go over it in my brain, but we could talk about what's going on in the Middle East. For me, a really good example of this as far as institutions, because I can't remember what it was squaring, but it was squaring like the midheaven for a moment there, which deals with public institutions. It just look at the writers and actors strike. That all started right around the time that the North Node returned in Aries. And I was telling my good friend who's a director in the Directors Guild, I said, you know, it's sort of smoothing out now. You know, nothing's really ever as bad as it seems besides 2020. That was probably worse than we all would have thought. I was like, you know, at the end of this, I almost feel like there isn't going to be a union anymore, because the Screen Actors Guild is actually not a union, it's a guild. So, you know, it's interesting how that actually works if you understand the structure of unions, which I don't, but I've heard these things. So I'm not going to go too deep into that. But I told my friend, I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day if it's just like every artist for themselves, and they don't actually, and the union gets dissolved or something like that. And I doubt that at this point. They seem to be doing negotiations and everything. But he said to me that his cousin psychic, who I've heard some other things about this psychic before, just like third party, I guess. She had some theories that I thought were very interesting. And so I said to him this about the Aries North Node return, like there may not be an actors guild in the next year. It might be every actor out for their own contract. And he said, that's funny, because that's actually what this psychic had said about 2020 when she made some of these other predictions that I thought were interesting. And I go, really, that same psychic? He's like, yes, because his cousin's like was married to a big director. And she said basically that in like 2024 that the Screen Actors Guild would be dissolved. Now, I'm not making that prediction. I honestly think at this point with the negotiations that everything's going to probably come together. Again, I can't even really explain to you like guild versus union and why it's not actually a union, but it's very complex, and so it is possible that that could all be dissolved. Again, I doubt it because they're negotiating, and I'm sure it'll all be fine, but it's definitely, the landscape's going to change. Like, artists are becoming more and more independent, especially when it comes to platforms like YouTube and Spotify and things like that. So we're going to see more of that in the next year with the Aries North Node return. People sort of going with these one-on-one partnerships, which is that Libra South Node, versus their own identity and independence, and not so much like dealing with institutions, right? Because a lot of that's the Aries is the ascendant and Libra is the descendant, and this is where the nodes are landing now for the collective, and this is all squaring the midheaven. So we're going to be dissolving institutions to go for more independent or one-on-one type of partnerships. It might be an actor and their lawyer negotiating a contract that has nothing to do with the union, and they might have more freedom to do that after this strike. So that's just showing you sort of the independence of the Aries North Node versus like the Libra South Node. You know, those relationships that were already formulated with that it's almost easier to trust one person than when you have a whole table of executives sitting in front of you, if that makes sense. So I don't really feel like I articulated that as well as I wanted to, but it's just to show you how this is playing out for the collective in a lot of different ways. Again, the writer strike started in June. That's already been resolved for now. The actor strike did start, I believe, within days. And I said on the first video that the North Node return started July 18th or 21st. I was wrong. It started like July 14th, depending on where you live. So that was like literally the day the actor strike started. So it was interesting that I said that to my friend. And then he said, oh, by the way, that psychic that you like of my cousin's said that same prediction, but it wasn't based off the astrology like I was saying. So it was weird how it came full circle. Gosh, I just thought of something I was going to throw out there to you guys really quick before we get into this couple's synastry. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll come back to me. That's a bummer because I just had like 2 synapses fire on something. But I'm going to be live a lot, so I'm sure it will come back to me. All right, so let's just get into this couple so I'm sitting at this establishment and I'm not really paying attention. And this older guy, he's not really that old. He was born in, I have the dates here. He was born in 1957 and they got married in I believe they met in 1974 and were married in 75. I have the notes on my phone, but I put their birthdays in here. So they've been married 50 years, but like for my grandparents, they were married 50 years, but that was like in the first half of the 1900s, right? They were married in I think they met in 1974 and were married in 75. So really, that's not really that long ago if you think about it. But they've been married 49 years, I think going on 50 in the next year or two. And so this guy is just he was sitting there, he had gotten some food to take home for him and his wife, and he was having a drink. And this guy, I kind of said this, but in the other video, but the owner goes, listen, this guy's been married for 50 years. And I was like, not really interested in this guy. I was in my own little world. And I'm like, oh, really? And so I start talking to him, and he's going on and on about how he loves his wife, and they met on this day in 1974 at 7 p.m. And he keeps repeating that to me, which was really annoying because the day that they met, I'm not going to say it, is my twin flame's birthday. So I'm like, why are you doing this to me? You know, thank you, I9 Bash. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. I'll be on more and more. So I'm just like, I guess I need to pay attention because of the synchronicity. So but I always am interested in a couple that's been married 50 years because that's, I don't come across those as much. I do have clients come to me. I've said this to you guys before that they're coming to me for what's our financial future? Should we sell our house? And they give me both their birthdays, and they've been married for 40 years. So I do get to kind of go and, yeah, I'm not answering their question based on that, but I'm checking out their synastry, and so anyways, I just want to get into this couple before I go off on a bunch of tangents, but we're just going to do like we did with Tony and Sri Gaskins yesterday. I'm just going to break down bullet point by bullet point their, what is going on here? Their synastry. One second. As you guys know, I'm getting over something, so I may have to clear my throat here and there. But, if you want to see how to pull up the charts and do all that, I will link again, and I linked it on the video yesterday, the Celebrity Synastry playlist. There's a few different ways to do it. I break it down in those videos, but just to get more content out there, we're not going to break it down. So if you want to learn how to do this yourself, I show you step by step on the computer, screen sharing in those videos. So, I'm always I have Mercury square Uranus, guys, so sometimes my tech stuff is a little crazy. So please be patient with me on that. And I get way too technical sometimes. So, okay. First of all, I went ahead and ran their moon signs, and I was a little perplexed, right? We always look at the moons first because his moon is in Pisces and her moon is in Aries. Now, I had a client that we really got into it because she kept coming to me, and her moon was in Aries and his moon was in Pisces, and obviously it wasn't working with them. So I was like, out of sign conjunction, neighboring moon signs is the one that I see people go the most crazy over, because they feel like this is their person, they feel like they've met the one, and they just can't seem, especially the masculine isn't cooperating. When it's an in-sign conjunction, it can create that too a little bit if the relationship isn't working out. But still, when it's in-sign moon conjunction, you're just compatible, whether you're together or not. So it's like if it's an in-sign moon conjunction and you two get separated and it doesn't work out, maybe because of life or the other aspects, there's still some mercy and grace there where you feel like, this is somebody who's really important to me. And it's almost like the unconditional love. It doesn't matter whether we're together or not at a certain point when the moons are in sign conjunction. Most of the time when they're in an in sign conjunction, especially within 5 degrees and you've connected, you're going to be together because that's pretty rare. Whether it's in the proper dignity or not, because I know one of you commented, I have a really low degree moon, and so I'm never going to meet anyone, which isn't true. But anyways, so I was frustrated when I saw that this couple married 50 years has this, neighboring sign moon thing. One thing it did confirm to me, because we talked about with David and Victoria Beckham, I said, I still think it needs to hold, the man's moon needs to hold the lower dignity like Vedic astrology. So his moon needs to be, in the sign before the woman's. But in this couple, the man's moon's in Pisces and the woman's is in Aries. So, wait. Let me see. Oh, so, okay, so I am right about that. his moon is still in the lower sign. So, okay, I haven't refuted that yet. If it's a semi-sextile, his moon still needs to be in the lower sign. Now, I can't prove this is an exact semi-sextile because we don't have their birth times, but I do have their birthplaces. And so when I ran it in AstroSeek, it gives you like a median, and the median was something like, and I didn't pull it up again today, I'm just going to tell you guys because we're going to go through each of their aspects. The median is that his moon is 14 degrees Pisces and her moon is, oh, no. So the estimate in here is saying her moon is in Aquarius and his is in Pisces. But I think when I actually put in their birthplaces, her moon is in Pisces and his is in Aries. Oh man, you guys, now I'm like, now I kind of do want to run it again, so I'm not telling you the wrong thing. But just for time's sake, I do think his is in the lower, hers is in the lower here, which was the opposite of what I said. And I said if I found that, I would hop on and tell you guys. So you could just fast forward through the last minute of that rant. But so the median for the moons, right, was that his moon was most likely like 14 degrees Pisces and her moon, her moon is 14 degrees Pisces and his moon is like 17 degrees median Aries. That's like the median time. So even if we pushed her moon back to like the earliest time of the day, like 12:01 a.m., I'm just going to throw something out there. Her moon would still be like, if it's the median 17 degrees Aries, it would be like the earliest it could be, let's say, is 10 degrees Aries. And if his moon's median is 14 degrees Pisces, wait, I'm mixing them up again because she's in Pisces, he's in Aries. But if hers is 17 degrees Aries and its earliest time of the day could be 14 degrees Aries or 9 degrees Aries, and his median is 14 degrees. I keep still saying Aries and he and she. Basically, if we push the Pisces moon up to the latest time of the day, if its median is 17 degrees, the latest time of the day would be what? I don't know, 25 degrees, 9 degrees. Guess that could be an out-of-sign moon conjunction. I'm really going to go with they have a semi-sextile because the medians are 14 and 17 degrees. So 3 degrees, maybe variance on that. When I said it needs to be an exact degree, if we had their birth times, it might be an exact degree. So again, it's still pretty tight orb if it's 3 degrees. So I'm going with they have a semi-sextile. If I ever do get their birth times, I'll come back. But right now, my theory about out-of-sign conjunctions, I'm standing on. I don't think that it can work when you have an out-of-sign moon conjunction. You're definitely going to be drawn to each other. You're going to feel like this might be your person. It's not really going to work. You're never really going to live together. I have a client now, and I told you guys with my Libra ascendant and my Virgo moon being so close to that ascendant, I draw a lot of Libra moons. I have a client, she's a Virgo moon like me, with a Libra moon baby daddy, not to call her out. They've never lived together. They still don't live together. It's been years. I like that new Tony Gaskins theory. If it's been 3 years and you're not married, it's time to drop him, whether you have kids or not, because he's just holding up your energy, okay? So if it's been over 3 years and they're still going back and forth, it's not working. I've never seen yet an out-of-sign moon conjunction work. So this may be the example of that, but I can't prove it. So we're going with they have a semi-sextile. Okay, I'm done with the moon. I'm done with the moons on this one. So let me clear my throat and we'll go through the other aspects. Okay, so his sun is opposite her Mars. If you've been following me, sun malefics with oppositions and squares to the sun, yeah, they can create challenges. They're not deal breakers or divorce aspects. So yeah, there's a little bit of feistiness and friction here. There could be some good fights, but even in that, it could even be underlying tension or passive aggressiveness. Could even be motivating force in an opposition because it's soft enough. Okay, so I said this at the beginning of the video, but I just want to clarify again because I've been dancing around it in the last few videos. Malefic deal breakers, which are things like, and I'll link the video below. Saturn square Pluto, Mars square Pluto, things like that. Those are malefic deal breakers. I said in all those videos that opposition counts too. I'm starting to backtrack on that. Oppositions can slip through, and I'm seeing them in these long-term older generation marriages. So oppositions can slip through when you're looking for someone. In the divine timing database, I'm not going to match you with Mars opposite Pluto. But if you meet someone, everything else is good, and you have Mars opposite Pluto, that one can still be frustrating. I'd go back to the description. If it's not working, that's why. Maybe this generation too, because there's so many options, we're not going to settle for something like that, where the older generation was a little more dedicated, something that I wanted to touch on. But oppositions can make it through. In a square, they don't make it through in those malefic deal breakers. Venus square Pluto, Saturn square Pluto, Mars square Pluto, even Mars square Neptune, they're not going to make it through, but the oppositions can, okay? One other thing that was interesting, when I was entering their birth times today and their birth dates, that I accidentally entered them as the same year, and this would have put her Pluto squaring his Mars, right? And Mars moves quick. So for him, people born a certain year, like the same year as him, he has it in his natal chart. If he had met a woman born the same year as him, she's born the year after him, they all would have been the wrong match for him, because all their Pluto, because Pluto moves slow, would have been squaring his Mars, right? But he went for a woman 1 year younger, not even a year younger. He's a Scorpio, she's an Aries. He's November 2nd, 1957. She's April 12th, 1958. If you want to plug it in and follow along or look into it yourself, maybe you know the asteroids. There's some cool, I should link them. There's some really cool synastry asteroid channels now. I haven't even gotten that deep into the asteroids. It's like, I feel like we each as astrologists find our patterns. And for me, it just really comes down to the planets in the synastry. And somebody commented on one of my videos the other day too, like, yesterday, I think, like that, oh, if the composite's good, then the synastry doesn't matter. Usually when you find good synastry, the composite's going to reinforce that. You need them both, because the synastry is how you fundamentally get along and interact. So you could have a great composite that says marriage all over it, but if you two don't get along, then what's the point, right? It's just going to be, you have a great marriage and you hate each other. But anyway, so anyway, Sun opposition Mars, a little bit of friction there. Sun opposition Jupiter. Jupiter and Venus and the Moon work very well in oppositions. So if anything, that would reinforce sort of a marriage aspect. It's her Sun opposite his Jupiter. Now remember, often we find the woman's, we've been talking about this a lot lately. What is her Jupiter? Her Jupiter is in Libra, actually conjunct his Mars, and his Jupiter's in Libra, because they're only about really actually 6 months apart, 5-6 months apart. So they have Jupiter conjunct Jupiter at a wide orb. I love that for marriage. Jupiter conjunct Jupiter, trine or Jupiter sextile Jupiter. It's great for like public, like if you want to date someone that you can have a good social media kind of rapport with, and then you can like go out on the town with, and everybody kind of recognizes you and they're like, oh, that couple's back again. You're probably gonna have Jupiter conjunct trine or sextile Jupiter, okay? So they do have that at a wide orb. And I don't know if it's in here, yeah. And they have, her Mars is trine his Jupiter, but his Mars is conjunct her Jupiter, and I'm not sure why it's not listing it here in the aspects. Must be like just slightly out of orb. But his Mars in Libra is conjunct her Jupiter. Her Mars in Aquarius is trine his Jupiter in Libra. Also trine her own Mars to a varying degree. Oh, no. They have Mars trine Mars, actually. Oh, is that in the... That's not even in here. Because if it's like this software, if it's right out of 5 degrees, it doesn't show it. So now I'm like finding all these great things that they had. So we talked about that with Tony and Sri Gaskins. They have Mars sextile Mars. I said the trine and the sextile are really great. In the conjunction, it's a little, it's like, it's great, but it just really depends. You might find that like 2 of the people that I've dated that I have Mars conjunct Mars with, one was at a really wide orb, but he was a Leo, I'm an Aries, so it was a wide orb, but his Mars was actually sextiling my sun in Aries, and my Mars was actually sextiling his sun in Leo. And then the most recent guy that I dated, we had Mars conjunct Mars at a 5-degree orb, and it was weird. It was like the same theme, and they reminded me a lot of each other. It was like the relationship played out exactly the same, and I adored them both a lot. But my Mars at 5 degrees, right? So now it's a different orb, was sextiling his Jupiter in Leo, and his Mars in Gemini was sextiling my Jupiter in Aries. And our Jupiters were sextile. So, you know, we had a lot of fun when we went out together. We were like that couple that everyone's like, oh, you guys are back again. Too bad he didn't appreciate it, I guess, which kind of is what happened with the Leo. I don't know. So sextiles can be a little soft, you know. If they meet someone that they have like Venus conjunct Mars with really strong and a bunch of other crappy aspects, they're going to think that that's the one, even though they had all this harmony and lightness and beauty in the chart with me. But anyway, no resentment there. They're not the one. All right. So I am just happy because I didn't even see this. Oh, it does say Jupiter conjunct Mars here, but I wouldn't have realized that they had Mars trine Mars, which, again, you guys, Mars trine or sextile Mars, especially if you're going to be married for like 50 years and you don't want the passion to die, or you have a pretty healthy libido, you're going to want to have Mars trine Mars or Mars sextile Mars. You want to run, I don't care if you're dating, if you've been dating for 5 years, you just met them and you think they're the best thing since sliced bread. If you have Mars square Mars or even opposition Mars, run, okay? You're constantly going to be tripping over them. It's going to be annoying. Okay. Especially if you have like a lot of, like if you're an Aries or you have a lot of Aries in your chart and that's ruled by Mars. You don't want to be, you might get caught up in an opposition like that, especially if you have some kind of confliction with your own Mars. It's just going to reinforce that and annoy you. Okay, anyways, so Mercury trine Venus. This is also one of my favorite ones for relationships. Her Mercury's trine his Venus, so they love to talk to each other. This one can be great for friendships as well, but I do see it a lot of times in happy, healthy couples. So they love talking to each other. They get a lot of pleasure out of it. Mercury opposition Mars, again, kind of with her sun opposite her Mars. She probably has sun conjunct Mercury, just like, gosh, everybody lately. Tony Gaskins has sun conjunct Mercury. One of my clients I'm working with, she just ordered from me again today, sun conjunct Mercury. So it's opposite his Mars, so there might be a little bickering, but that Mercury trine Venus is really going to smooth that out for them. So, and it's not nearly as annoying as like Mercury square Venus or opposite Venus. That's like those interminable, opposition is not too bad, but Mercury square Venus, I did a video on it. It's like those interminable discussions where you go on and on and on and on, and you try to convince each other. And it's really all surface level, but you feel like you can talk to this person for hours, but really, it's not very gratifying, but you think it is because you have their attention. But Mercury trine Venus, you may not have their attention all the time, but when you talk to them, it's just so uplifting. You feel so good. So if it's like, good morning, how's your coffee? Or, oh, good afternoon, this is what happened today. It's just very reassuring. But Mercury opposition Mars, I don't think it's nearly as annoying as, again, Mercury square Venus. There's a little bickering there. She might be like, you know, and Mercury can be critical. So opposite his Mars, she might be like, why do you do that? You know, why do you always... His Mars is action, right? So that's where it's like, why do you leave the toilet seat up or something like that? So her Mercury is opposite his Neptune. Again, I see this a lot in marriages. It's those little white lies. In a square, you might want to be careful that it's not bigger lies. But it can create a little bit of mystery with Neptune. So she's always kind of trying to figure him out. Mercury trine Pluto, they are able to tell each other their deepest, darkest secrets, which is good for intimacy. I really like Mercury trine Pluto. Now, they do have Venus opposition Pluto, and I don't love this one, even in an opposition. They made it 50 years with it, so now we know that you can in an opposition. In a square, you're not going to make it that long. You're not going to make it more than like 5 or 6 years, maybe 10 if you have other good stuff. I just had a client this summer who had Venus opposition Pluto in his marriage, and it really was the only, it was really the only thing that they had. But it was wreaking a lot of havoc. But I think at the end of the day, it might come down again to his own issues, his own natal issues, his own mental health issues. But Venus opposition Pluto, it's once the two break up or separate, it's very hard to get back together without there being a lot of resentments. So the way this guy told the story about his marriage, I don't think they've ever had a separation. especially with like Mars conjunct or all the good Mars and Jupiter that they have. Good Mars and Saturn and good Mars and Jupiter, you're not going to really be taking a lot of breaks because you're just too in it together. You're a team. You're just doing everything together. So I'm going to say if these two, the way he tells it, I don't think they ever had a separation. So like Tony Gaskins and Sri Gaskins had a separation early on because of probably Sun square Neptune. And if they had had Venus opposition Pluto, it may not have come back together. But with these two, I'm assuming they never had a break. And it's an opposition. If it was a square, they wouldn't have made it, even with all the other good stuff. It would have just been too much like possessiveness with Pluto. Like, he's mine and he is hers in this marriage, right? And he's devoted to her. But it would have just been like petty things where she's like, oh, remember that high school friend you had that was calling? It just would have gotten under her skin as Venus and hurt her feelings. And Pluto, yeah. So in an opposition, now we know a couple can make it 50 years. In a square, still never seen a couple make it past 5 or 6 years. Never. Okay. Mars square Mercury, they got it going both ways. Well, opposition one way. So yeah, they do bicker like an old married couple, but they also communicate well in other ways. So yeah, if they had like Mercury square Venus and Mars square Mercury, that'd be like the couple you're like, why are you guys together? You're driving each other nuts. But with Mercury trine Venus, there are those soft, sweet moments, and Mercury rules the day-to-day. So they do argue, they do bicker. Mars trine Jupiter, so it is in here, okay. Jupiter sextile Venus. I often, pretty much in every marriage that lasts more than like 15 years, you're going to see good Jupiter trine conjunct sextile Venus aspect in there. Jupiter conjunct Mars again, we said. Oh, her Saturn's conjunct his Venus, just like Tony Gaskins' Saturn is conjunct Cherie's Venus, because we talked about them yesterday. Great one for marriage. Didn't even realize this because I did mention it earlier when I was listing off like about Mars and Saturn and stuff. Her Saturn is sextile his Mars and conjunct his Venus. Very solid marriage aspect. Saturn is longevity, commitment, sacrifice. She provides him a lot of security, which his Venus and Mars, it's probably why he goes on and on about how wonderful she is. His sun is squaring her Uranus, so this is where she could act a little erratic. But I feel like with those strong Saturn contacts, it's not enough to scare him away. And I have seen this. There was a couple that didn't have moon compatibility. This was a few years ago. I'm surprised I even remember out of all the charts I look at. His sun was squaring her Neptune and Uranus, and they were separated. She was in another state. I don't remember all the details, but they didn't have moon compatibility. So it was falling apart around 10 years, and they had children, and they were married, but she was leaving him. And I remember his sun was squaring her Neptune and Uranus. So it was like he's like, what can I do to change for her? Because she's like, you need to make changes. Almost like I'm not saying she was a narcissist, but like narcissists will do that. They say like move the goalposts on you. So like you're trying to do better and you're trying to help, and they won't quite tell you what you did wrong. So they keep moving the goalposts. So I'm not saying with just one aspect of this, he might feel that way a little with her sometimes. She definitely makes him jump through hoops, which when it's the male jumping through hoops for the female, that's good, because then the man never feels like, oh yeah, I got it like that. You know what I mean? So that's why this actually probably makes him worship her even more. So Uranus conjunct Uranus, he probably has his own sun squaring his Uranus to some degree, so he's kind of used to that energy as well. This could create a lot of spontaneity in their relationship also. Neptune conjunct Neptune, again, you're going to see that with people born close together. Unless you have really bad natal aspects, you really can't go wrong with dating someone near your age either. So I told you guys, someone put, well, everyone born like the late 80s and early 90s has Neptune conjunct Uranus. I told you guys, I wrote on the comment, you need to date outside that age range. And I'm actually going to do a video this week or next week as I'm doing these themes, where I'm going to pull up my other software, because I can really look and tell you guys like, okay, everyone born from 1989 to 1994 has Neptune conjunct Uranus. So if you're born in those years, unless there's like a retrograde happening, you probably want to try dating outside of those years. I just said that again in a roundabout way. But gosh, where was I going? Because my sister, for example, is dating a man. They're living together. They are born the same day of the same year, and the time is not very off. So their moons are conjunct, their suns are conjunct. They have double whammies on everything. Well, my sister has a harmonious birth chart. Okay, I have a grand cross. If I date a guy, I've dated a guy that was born like the day before me, or I was talking to him, trying to get to know him. His moon, though, it was in Virgo, low degree Virgo. But he had a woman that was a Virgo that he was hiding because he was trying to get to know me, and she ended up calling me. So anyway, I barely talked to him. It was just like, oh, let's exchange numbers. But I have a grand cross in my birth chart. So it's not really that great for me to date someone born right the same as me. Although there was this meme that was like, maybe you haven't found love because your soulmate's already dead. And there was a boy that I knew when I was a teenager that was born 4 days after me. And we actually do have really beautiful synastry. His moon is in Scorpio. We have like Venus trine Mars and Venus conjunct Venus or something. I don't know. I can't remember right now. No, because that would be square for me. But so I do kind of, and it really messed with me. I almost do wonder if we wouldn't have ended up together. But anyway, Neptune conjunct Neptune. Her Neptune sextile his Pluto. Great spiritual contact, soulmate contact. Pluto conjunct Pluto, 2 degrees. Her North Node's conjunct his Neptune, very, very soulmate contact. Her North Node sextile his Pluto. Anything with the North Node is good because, right, she's trying to fulfill her North Node in this life. I failed to ask if they had children. Oh, I should have asked. I think they do, but I could be wrong. Like my friends' grandparents who were married for like 70 years, I think they had one child who died and then they adopted. That's why he's actually they're his adopted grandparents. And I think it's like Mars opposition Saturn they have, which is an opposition, which was the first couple I've seen with that. But it's not Mars opposite or squaring Saturn or Jupiter is not a very fertile aspect. So I very, very rarely see people with children with Mars squared Jupiter, for example. Usually it doesn't work at all. But I've seen like one now, I think, and I think it was an opposition. And I think there was like even paternity question, like she wasn't sure. But anyway, so the thing, I was talking about this a lot, the North Nodes and the South Nodes right now. You need someone who's in harmony with your North Node, especially like for me, you guys go talk about myself, but like with a South Node in Libra, you're very comfortable in relationships. You can just kind of get tied up in relationships that don't help you fulfill your destiny. So what is her North Node sign? Let's see. And then we're wrapping it up here. Okay. Yeah, about 45 minutes. Sometimes in this software, it doesn't quite give me the right North Node. It's saying her North Node is in Scorpio. One sec. Okay, so her North Node is in Scorpio, conjunct his Neptune. Again, I kind of talked about this yesterday. There was something when I was reviewing about it too. Because, you know, Scorpios get a bad rap, but Scorpios are, I was saying like they love to be in the home and cultivate, and they're really actually about family and the private life, kind of like Cancer. But there's also something with them, when it comes to professional sector and work, they actually are kind of like Virgo, where they are very scientific and they're like make really good surgeons and things. Pisces kind of could do that too. Yeah, the water signs. They're very family oriented and they can deal with like Cancers make great nurses. Pisces can deal with a lot of blood and gore. They can also, they're good with like needles and stuff like that. And Scorpios and even Pisces can make great surgeons. Because Scorpio, it's dealing with like sex and death, and Pisces deals with death in another way. So they're not really afraid of death, and they like secret knowledge, the occult. So it's kind of unknown knowledge to the masses how to do those kind of operations. So it's a very scientific mind in a way. Even I see 8th house, 12th house placements might make you guys more that way as well. Like my moon in the 12th, in Virgo, I'm very like into procedures and things, which is kind of off from the astrology stuff. And moon in the 12th also is creative and psychic. But anyways, so her North Node is in Scorpio. His Pluto, which is the traditional ruler of Scorpio is sextiling her North Node, which is a great reinforcement as well. So as she was growing and expanding in life, and I don't really know like if she was just a housewife or if she had a career or much about her, besides he gave me their birth times and when they met. And I could even go look up the transits of the time, but I don't have their birth time. So anyway, okay, going in circles now, but this shows why they were able to stick it out as well, these great North Node contacts. Now, is everyone you meet, are you meant to be with them if you have North Node contacts? I don't think you're necessarily meant to be with them just based on North Node contacts, but you were definitely meant to meet them. And they were meant to inspire you or guide you or maybe even just give you a piece of information to get you where you're going. Like I just saw a meme that said this, and I've said this forever, probably from some Ann Landers article when I was a kid, but, friends come for a season, reason, or a lifetime. So if you meet a North Node person, that doesn't mean they're a lifetime person. But if you have a lifetime person with all these solid, solidifying, reinforcing aspects that makes a great team, where you have great physical compatibility because your Mars are compatible and you have great emotional compatibility, then it does not hurt to have strong North Node contacts because you're going to be able to grow and evolve and expand together. But if you meet someone, they might just be there to tell you like, oh, hey, did you ever think about going and applying at this place? And you might brush it off and not think much of it. And like, oh, I wonder if that guy's going to call. And then a month later, you're like, oh, maybe I should go apply at that place. You might even remember they said it to you. That could be North Node too, a reason, right? So season, reason, or lifetime. It could be a season just to get you through, to make you make a transition, something like that. And then they have these IAC and XMC things on here, which I get a little confused about in Cafe Astrology because that's what I pulled up here. But those, they pretty much have in harmony as well. So yeah, so also not only is her Saturn conjunct his Venus, because they're born close together, his Saturn's in Sagittarius also at a wide orb. So, kind of back to what I was saying about my sister, you can't really go wrong dating someone close to your age because those generational planets are the same. But that's also then when it comes down to like why the moon is so important, because it's like, oh, well, if I have a good birth chart and I could just date anyone born the same year as me or within a year, well, no, because, okay, first of all, 15 out of 30 days of the month, they're not going to have good moon compatibility with you, okay? So, it is a little bit of a roll of dice and law of averages here, or running into the right one. So we're right at under 45 minutes. I like keeping it about that. I'm going to just kind of touch on what I told you guys would be the overall theme, which is like, why are we not meeting these people? Why did they meet in 1974 on a certain day in April and they just hit it off and they got married and they never parted and they never activated Venus opposition Pluto to have resentments and jealousies? Well, probably because that generation was more devoted. Now, they were married in the 70s. Most of these couples that I see that were married for 50 to 70 years were married like before 1950. Obviously that like especially the 50s generation was brought up to be, monogamous, conservative sort of values, and people debate about evolution and going back and whether we're really meant to be monogamous and yada, yada, yada. I'm not really going to get into it. It's a little too political. Or we'll do it another day. Write me some comments if you want me to, if you're curious about any of that or anything that you want me to talk about when I go live. But yeah, so I'm trying to figure it out, you guys. I'm trying to figure it out. I really just think it's because of like airplane travel and we're all mixed around and, but then it's like, we think that, right? We think, oh, we travel more now, but half our ancestors migrated from other countries to like America, for example. So on boats, and it was a long journey and they couldn't just fly home. So I guess maybe it was easier to stick with whoever you were traveling with, but then why would the synastry align? And why with modern day couples, which are, so, again, I don't think it's actually that rare, but when you're single and you're looking at the masses and you're like, there's 7 billion people and there's all these options and I can't find one for me, why are some couples actually meeting and aligning and having good synastry? Okay? Submit to divinetimingdatabase.org if you want to find your astrological match. That's even better than this one because I won't match you with people that you even have Venus opposition Pluto with or Mercury square Neptune with. Yeah, spread the word on that. I'm just going to be like the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. I'm not going to shut up until you guys are in there. Especially if you're single and you're complaining, especially if you're coming to me for personal readings about people you have bad synastry with, go submit to divinetimingdatabase.org. All right. And thank you so much, I9 Bash, for joining me and whoever else was in here. And it did take a little while yesterday for the video that was about 45 minutes long to upload on the replay. So if you didn't catch this on the live, it might be like a day delayed. I didn't go over any current transits or anything, so it won't be off. But, oh, it's today, Tuesday. I had to pick a day of the week to go over the current transits, or at least some of them. All right, so I'm sending you all lots of love, blessings, and light as always, and I will see you tomorrow around 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.